Hello, and welcome to another day in your Kajabi journey. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the podcast product. We'll set it up so you can see how easy it is to use, and then I'll give you some, great ideas and tips on ways you can integrate the podcast product into your coaching or group practice, group programs, or whatever it is that you're doing to interact with your audience. So let's jump right in and check this out. From the Kajabi dashboard, we're going to click on Products and then come down to Podcasts. We're going to hit Get Started, and then we're going to create a new podcast. Now, if you're at your product limit, Kajabi will let you create a podcast in draft mode, which is great. So I'm going to fill in this information here, and then we can move forward. All right, so the title of the podcast is the title of the podcast. The host and the description, it's all there. And if you're going to be doing this, I would recommend that you Google or chat with an AI about some tips about how to make a good podcast description. These are all things that are related to search within the podcast apps. And so it's going to be beneficial for you to make sure you do these things with some purpose and intent. A public podcast is just what it seems like, public for anyone to listen to. A private podcast is just for access that you provide. This is actually one of the really great features of Kajabi podcasts. What it lets you do is integrate a private podcast to your group programs or your coaching practice, or however it is that you're working with your customers through a course, perhaps. You can take your video content, extract the audio, and upload it into a private podcast as an MP3. And that way, it's just one other step that makes it easier for people to get your stuff, and to instead of watching the replays, they can listen to them and things like that. A lot of people are podcasters, and connecting a private podcast to your offerings lets your clients listen to your stuff right from their podcast apps, which could be really convenient for them. So we're going to call it public, and we're going to call it private, and we are going to continue. If we weren't in draft mode, we could have called it public. So here we need to choose our podcast language and the category, and then the order that things will be posted. So this is going to be an English podcast, and the category, well, there's lots here to choose from, and you might just need to take some time to see which category is best going to suit your podcast. The episodic order is episodes appearing from newest to oldest. So whenever you have a new episode, it's going to be at the top of the list. The serial order will appear from oldest to newest, split up by seasons. So it just really depends on how you're going to be releasing your content and how you want people to see it. We get to choose a color, like always, and we're just going to jump in with red and that color. And you need to have an image. This can't be blank. It has to be square, recommended 3000 by 3000. And this is actually pretty important because you are going to be distributing this podcast through Apple and Spotify, and these are their requirements. So you want to make sure that you have a 3000 by 3000 image. Kajabi does have a size limit of 5 megabytes per image, so you might need to run your image after you've made it through a service like Squoosh or TinyPNG, where you can actually compress the size of it while keeping the aspect the same and the dimensions the same. If you're not able to just save your image in a small enough file size while it's still staying this big. All right, so with my picture uploaded, I can save and finish. So here is the basic outline of the podcast. Episodes will start to appear here as we post them, and it's really easy. You just hit new episode, you give it a title. Don't put your show notes in yet. Just upload your MP3 file, and then you can put your show notes in afterwards. And the reason is the formatting doesn't continue on from this screen to the next. And so you just upload them and then your episodes will appear over here. And you can set a publishing date and you can put in your show notes, and it's really easy to do. When you come into the settings area, you can see, the settings that you've set for it. And it's worth, just coming through here. And if you want, you can even add extra categories, which is a great way to increase the visibility of your podcast. Now, this is a private podcast, so there's no distribution up here. And normally on a public podcast, there would be a distribution right up here. And what you do is you click, and then it shows you how to connect to Apple and to Spotify. This step requires that you have an Apple Connect and a Spotify for Creators account set up. So you need to go and do those things. There's some good help videos in that distributors area. So if you click on Apple and then the link that learn how, it takes you to a good video by Kajabi on how to set that up. Once you have an Apple Connect account, you log into it and then you connect the RRS feed from Kajabi into your Apple Connect account, and you come back and into Kajabi, hit done, and it verifies your connection. And you do essentially the same thing for your Spotify account. And what that does is it links your podcast, if it's a public podcast, to those two distributors. And many of the other podcast distributors take their feeds directly from Apple or Spotify. So you don't have to worry about missing out on any of those platforms. If any of your customers are like, hey, I listen on this app and I can't find you there, we can just go to that app or service, take your RS feed and directly connect it to that platform. So you don't have to miss out on, not being able to be seen or heard on any sort of platform. So this is how you can connect your podcast to those services. And this is how you can set up a podcast, and it works really easily and well. One thing that you get when you set up a podcast in Kajabi is a podcast page. And it's actually a page on the website, and it shows you all of the episodes. It makes it really easy to put your podcast episodes on your site. You don't get to edit this page or design it. It's very templated, but it's also, it looks good. It's clean and simple, and it's effective. And so if you are going to be sending emails to your list referencing your podcast episodes, this is a great way to link to them. You can connect this podcast page that's already created to your website by just putting a link to it in the menu, in your header, and then it's there. And you don't have to do any extra steps to get your podcast onto your website, which is pretty great. Now, I mentioned private podcasts a few times, and those work really well to deliver your content to your customers. The way that works is through offers. So what it does is in your offer that you're selling, say, your group program with, you just add another product and you choose your podcast product. And then when somebody buys it, Kajabi will send them an email with a very unique link just for them that they can then go into Apple Podcasts with, go to the library, click the three dots up there, and then do add show by URL. And then they can just put that URL in, and then your private show is in their library. And whenever you add new episodes, it just goes right into their feed, basically, so that they can get it. And if your program is, for 5 months, once 5 months is up, they'll lose that access. Kajabi manages all of that if you have it into the offer, with your program. So the podcast feature is pretty great. Even if you're not going to be podcasting out to the world, you can include a private podcast to make your content more accessible to your clients. And these are just some great things to know about as a Kajabi user. So poke around in there if you want, and I will see you tomorrow for some more tips.